Hi guys, it's Mia, and today I'm going to be talking about how being adopted affects my relationships and my self-esteem. So first off, I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm going to be talking about relationships. With family, when I was younger, I had a lot of separation anxiety that was stemmed from being adopted and probably trauma from being abandoned because I was abandoned on a street. And that makes sense to me just because I didn't have a mom immediately when I was a baby that was there for me. I had the adoption center, which I don't know anything that happened in there or anything like that, but I do understand how my separation anxiety could come from that. So whenever I would go over to any friends' houses when I was probably elementary school up to the beginning of middle school, I would always get sick and cry and miss my parents a lot, and it would usually result in me throwing up and having to call my parents and have them come get me, just because I always had this deep, unsettling, anxious feeling whenever I was away from them. And that continued for a while again until the beginning of my middle school years. And when I went into middle school, that completely flipped. I was definitely a rebellious kid. I was in my rebellious phase. I don't even know how long I stayed in that phase, but there's just a lot of pent-up anger and angst in me. And I know I made my mom's life probably a living hell, but I was really mean to my parents. I didn't appreciate everything that they were doing to me, and I also think it stemmed from trying to be like growing up and understanding more about being adopted and my relationship with my parents and thinking about the relationship with my parents. Some people would ask me, are those your real parents? Why do you call them your parents when they're not your real parents? And I'm like, they are my real parents. But then I would think, and then I'd think too deeply about it, and it'd just be super confusing to me. But I mean, they are my real parents. That's final. Growing up, I've always kind of had this detachment and this lack of closeness with my entire family, just for the fact that they are very Caucasian and there is no other diverse ethnicities within my family. They're very much a very, again, like white conservative family. And the only time that I felt like I had some feeling of closeness or some spark of hope about being close to someone was when my brother had married someone from Japan. And the only reason why I felt some closeness to her was because I was trying to figure out my Asian heritage and trying to kind of go back to my roots and figure out my roots, because my parents really didn't help me with anything regarding that. I was very much raised as a, stereotypical white kid in a suburb. So I had to figure out my culture by myself, and I feel like once I figured out more about my culture, that caused more rifts between me and my parents, because it caused more butting heads, different opinions, things like that. And it got to the point where I had a conversation with my mom, telling her how I didn't feel as close to her, and we talked it out. Everything's okay now. I feel like we're getting more close, but again, since we have different attitudes, different beliefs, sometimes it can be hard. But ultimately, I still don't feel as close with my family as, say, like my boyfriend is with his family. All of his family is very tight knit. Whenever I had family gatherings over at my house, I would always go upstairs into my room and I wouldn't really talk to anyone, just because I just felt like I didn't relate to a lot of my family members. And a lot of that is also on me, just not putting in the effort to try to build relationships with other people. But I do have a closer relationship with my older brother, just because he studied in Japan for 2 years and fluent in Japanese, is very cultured when it comes to Asian things. So it's nice to be able to have someone in the family that I can talk to about that type of stuff. So ultimately, to summarize, I still don't feel super close to my family. My immediate family I do feel more close to naturally, just because I see them all the time. I talk to them all the time. But there's still just that kind of barrier that I've built up just because I realize, I'm not biologically related to them. And I know that can seem stupid, but it's just something that I can't help feeling, that I'm not biologically related to them. Like, I don't have that feeling of knowing my ancestry, talking about my grandparents like I'm related to them, talking about any health illnesses, anything like that relate to me, because I'm not biologically related to my parents. So whenever doctors ask me about that type of stuff, I can't say anything because I'm adopted. I don't know. I have no information about me, the me before I got adopted. And I think all of that unknown, when I think about it hard enough, causes me a lot of thought and more feelings of just not feeling close to my parents or my immediate family, just because there's so many things that I don't know and that I'll probably never know. When it comes to friends, like, there's those type of people that are super attentive and always check up on you and try really hard to like keep your friendship together. But for me, I feel like for some reason that like friendships, they're important, of course, but they don't have that high of importance to me as probably to someone else. Just because simply I think I have this like ingrained thing in me that people will leave. People will always leave. No one's permanent in your life. And for some reason, rather than like holding on to people tighter, knowing that, I kind of just avoid having super deep relationships to try to protect myself from it. And ironically, that's completely different from my romantic relationships, because when I get into a relationship, I'm very much dependent on my partner and give all my attention to them and entrust them with a lot more things. And I do feel like for both my friends and my romantic relationships, I do put more effort and of course tell them more things than I would to my family. It has been something that my mom has talked to me about, just because she feels like as family she should know some things before my friends or my significant other do. But for some reason, I'm just more comfortable talking to my friends or my significant other about that. So with friends, I'm just not as proactive in keeping the relationship close and going. I kind of see it as a floating thing where people change interests. They may not like me anymore. There could be stuff that happens, and it's just easier, I guess, for me to protect myself and kind of build up my wall. I'm definitely the type of person that if you meet me, I either have my wall built up where I don't want to make friends, or I'm very much outgoing and talkative and I do want to make new friends. I'm definitely the type of person that can have like 2 or 3 close friends, but I'm not the type of person that can have a huge group of friends, just because I don't like dealing with all of the drama and emotions and things that come with that. And I feel like that can also kind of link to my adoption, just because, people leave, like I was left, and I think that's kind of like ingrained into my mind that you can't make people stay. And I think that's also like okay that you can't make people stay, just because everyone has their life and everyone's trying to figure everything out, and sometimes it's just easier to let them figure it out on their own. Either way, I kind of have a weird attitude when it comes to relationships, obviously, since I don't value them, I feel like, as much as other people do, and I probably should. And hopefully that'll be something that as I grow more within myself, that I can learn to accept and love and cherish other people that aren't like my significant other, say my parents. Moving on to my self-esteem. I know for my self-esteem, I do have lower self-esteem, just because I do become a very jealous person when it comes to friends and relationships, because I feel like people will leave me for someone better or something better. And that's just something that I have been struggling with for most of my life, that people will always leave me for something better. And I don't know if that's also ingrained into my adoption, because the other thing that I don't know that I've thought about is, say like they had, like my biological parents had another kid, like why didn't they choose to keep me, or why did they even have me if they had another kid, or why wasn't I worth raising or being taken care of or trying or anything. I don't know. There's a lot of questions when it comes to that stuff that I'm never gonna have the answer to because I don't want to find my biological parent. I'm really working on trying to gain more self-love and trying to put myself together and pep talk myself that that's not the case, that people love you because they love you, and if they leave you then they're not the right person to be in your life. But it's definitely something that I have struggled with for a lot of my life, is not feeling like I'm good enough, not feeling like I'm worthy enough. Both my relationship and self-esteem is very rocky. It's a work in progress. I'm trying to get better and just trying to let myself know that being adopted doesn't define me, and you can't control what you can't control, so just accept how it is and make the most of it. So thank you for listening to my very convoluted rant, and I hope it gives you more insight into how someone who is adopted might think. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.